This new propeller-driven airliner is so fast, it would overtake every Messerschmitt and Spitfire of World War II. We're flying the Dornier 328. They may be dwarfed by the big jets and jumbos, but small airliners designed to fly short regional routes are now the fastest growing sector of the aviation market in Europe. This latest breed of airliners are much cheaper to fly than their big jet cousins. The reason? They have economical gas turbine engines, turning an invention which is still by far the most efficient way to power anything that floats or flies, the propeller. One of a whole new generation of airliners transforming the economics of civil aviation is the Dornier 328, the fastest turboprop in its class. The 328's engines come from Canada. Those propellers are American. Other major components come from Korea, Italy and the UK. Dornier, part of Daimler-Benz Aerospace, carries out final assembly in Germany. Captain Christian Vorning and co-pilot Klaus Deubel are lighting up the number 2 engine.
Waiting for fuel flow and ignition. Ignition is there. 25%, the ECU is online. 30% oil pressure is up.
On the 328 and most modern turboprops, both propellers turn in the same direction. The effects of the prop wash are counteracted by automatic rudder trim.
And left side is clear. Starting number 1. Start engage, rotation 10%. Fuel flow and light off. 25% ECU online. 30% oil pressure. There's 45% starter cutout. And a good start.
With both engines running, the crew receives permission to taxi. The pitch of the propellers is altered so that the blades begin to bite the air, and the 328 moves towards the runway.
Yes, so we'll set heading 303 now.
That heading, 303, is the alignment of the main runway, 303 degrees. In other words, it points towards the northwest. All runways are identified by their compass headings in degrees, but these are normally abbreviated to the first 2 digits. The runway to which the Dornier is taxiing is therefore called, for short, runway 30.
Dornier 02, the clearance is climb runway heading, maintain flight level 60. Climb further when instructed by Cardiff radar, or 2627.
Okay, so we have now received our air traffic clearance. He wants us to continue straight ahead the runway heading, climb up to 6,000 feet. And what we also got was the 4-digit number for our transponder for our identification on the radar, air traffic control radar.
Check, Chris, it's flight level 60.
It's flight level 60, yeah.
Dornier 02, runway heading up departure, clear takeoff, runway 30, surface wind 240 or 1 knot.
Clear takeoff, Dornier 02 and cockpit.
Landing lights coming on,
Okay.
brake is off, condition levels max.
Please.
Gearbox 05, Charlie, start up with the crew.
Okay, everything okay?
Check completed. Okay, so we're rolling. Brakes have been released, and I'm setting takeoff power.
Speed
Takeoff
aligned.
power is coming. The autopilot
is
system is armed.
Power set. 80 knots.
Checked.
V1. Via, rotate. Positive.
Gear up.
Gear selected up.
Airborne at just 131 miles an hour, an automatic system adjusts the aircraft's trim.
In and up lights out.
Okay, 400 feet.
400.
Flaps up.
Left 0.
And the climb power.
Climb power is coming.
Okay, so we got safely airborne. We've done the checklist. After getting airborne, an important item for passenger comfort is, of course, setting the climb power, meaning reducing the RPM of the propellers, making the aircraft much more quiet.
Making the inside of the aircraft quiet is a major problem for the makers of all turboprop airliners. Sitting close to those props can be noisy.
If you're sitting next to the propellers, in line with the propeller discs, and you're right between them, you will notice that the propellers, by virtue of the sound that they generate, and literally waves of sound hitting the fuselage, they are much noisier than jets are to travel in. They're not noisier from the outside. To somebody hearing one go past, they're very quiet. But for the passenger, they're really quite noisy. But nobody minds a certain level of noise, providing that you don't have it for very long. So if your trip's less than an hour, it doesn't bother you.
Earlier turboprops like the Vickers Viscount certainly did bother passengers, but the ear-splitting shriek of its Dart engines was worst of all for people on the ground. The new generation of turboprops is quieter and faster. This Saab 2000 can fly at 434 miles an hour, and yet for passengers, even those sitting next to the props, noise levels are very low. That's because of a revolutionary new system called active noise control, which literally cancels out the propeller sound. The unwanted noise is picked up by dozens of microphones built into the fuselage. The aircraft's own computer-controlled sound system generates a cancelling signal exactly out of phase with the sound waves of the noise. The simultaneous signals have the effect of dampening out the sound waves, and the result? Noise in the passenger cabin is almost totally eliminated. The Dornier solution is simpler, but just as effective. The metal stringers running the length of the fuselage are specially designed so as not to vibrate in tune with the engines. Every fuselage frame has a built-in vibration absorber, ensuring that noise levels in the cabin are well below those of conventional turboprops. The fuselage sections, made in Korea, are mated with nose cones in Italy before being taken by road for final assembly at the Dornier plant in Oberpfaffenhofen in Germany. Extensive use is made of weight-saving composite materials in construction. The first prototype 328 was rolled out with a champagne launch.
Allzeit guten Flug.
After the band and the balloons, it was time for the tests and the torture. The tail of this 328 is forced to scrape the runway as the nose is deliberately pulled too high on takeoff. And there are other tests too to make airline pilots wince. Can the 328 take off from a grass strip safely despite losing one engine? And clear that mountain dead ahead? The answer is yes. Having got up safely, can it make a short landing with one engine shut down and not providing any braking effect? It may not be smooth, but it's a landing. On the ground, the 328 has to show it can handle wet and greasy runways with alacrity. In the air, it has to be able to cope with every aviator's nightmare, ice. In an air temperature well below zero, a 328 with its anti-icing equipment switched off begins to accumulate ice on its engine intake and tail. To make matters worse, another aircraft flies ahead to douse the 328 with the coldest of cold showers. Turboprops can be prone to icing problems as they operate at lower altitudes than larger jet aircraft. Despite the mid-air spray, the 328's anti-icing equipment quickly deals with the buildup of ice. This proving flight was a success, but other tests revealed weight and performance problems which were to delay certification for a year. The 328 finally entered airline service in 1993 and was an immediate success. Now more than 40 are in service with 10 airlines, including launch customer Air Engiadina of Switzerland. The 328 is the latest in a long line of aircraft bearing the Dornier name. The Dornier Val, the flying boat used by Amundsen on his North Pole expedition of 1925, was one of the first. It had tandem propellers mounted above the wing. Its success in the Arctic made Dornier's name and encouraged him to build larger flying boats. The DOX of 1929 was the biggest aircraft in the world. 12 engines were mounted in pairs in 6 nacelles above the wing. Those who doubted it was possible for an aircraft weighing 61 tons to fly were confounded. But it drank fuel. The rear-facing engines overheated, and it was a struggle to get above 1,400 feet. The DOX, though, successfully completed an impressive grand tour of 4 continents. Inside, there were 3 decks and luxury accommodation for 170 passengers, with separate sleeping cabins, a lounge, a recreation room, and in the days before passengers were expected to eat in their seats, there was, of course, a separate restaurant. By 1934, Dornier was developing warplanes for the Luftwaffe, like the Do-17, the so-called flying pencil. The distinctive sound of its throbbing engines were all too often a portent of another air raid on cities in Britain and Europe. In October 1943, the tandem-engine Dornier 335 reached a speed of 454 miles an hour to become one of the fastest propeller-driven aircraft of the Second World War. Today, that Dornier tradition of developing high-speed propeller-driven aircraft continues with the 328.
It's the fastest 30-seater turboprop aircraft around. In fact, it's around 40 to 50 knots faster than the competition. We are also able to keep very high airspeed at the lower levels, which means that we can keep up with all the jet traffic at the busy airports. So we're never put at the end of the queue waiting for jet airplanes to come in.
Over the coast, the Dornier accelerates to 385 miles an hour.